there's a good comedy tradition here. I mean, you go back, you look like even, in the 50s, so we had people performing at Docks. It was a Purple Onion then, but we had, Phyllis Diller and Lenny Bruce here. Stand-up has a long tradition in San Francisco, and that hasn't let up. We've still got great comics coming out of the Bay all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gubser!
Thank you. That's optimistic. Thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for being here. So, I have children. I know this is San Francisco, so none of you know what those are. They're like startups, basically. They're like non-profit startups for causes that no one else in the world cares about. I have 3 kids, I've been a dad for almost 15 years, and I can still remember the exact day that I stopped trying to be a good parent. My oldest daughter was 4. She was in preschool, and it was Clown Day. I don't know how they do Clown Day where you guys are from, but at my daughter's school on Clown Day, they had this big party and all the kids dressed up like clowns. My daughter, when she was little, she was very shy, she was very quiet, she had kind of a hard time making friends. So I thought, you know what, this is gonna be the perfect opportunity for her to impress those little shits. So we got up like an hour early for school. We were gonna do Clown Day big. So we went and we did like the full face makeup. We got her this big red nose. We put her hair in these crazy pigtails and we spray painted them rainbow colors. She had this ridiculous outfit on. Like we had taken a pair of my old shoes and cut them up and painted them so she could wear those over her regular shoes so she could have big shoes on Clown Day. I was feeling pretty good. I felt like I helped my little girl out. And I picked her up from school that afternoon. I was like, hey, honey, did you have a good time today? You have fun at Clown Day? She goes, Daddy, Clown Day's next Wednesday. So, baby, I know you're only 4, but you might be better off on your own. This is as good as it gets. I'm so sorry. Like I've been a dad for a while. Still, like 3 kids deep. I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. Honestly, the only thing I know I'm doing right for sure is sunscreen. That is it. And my kids even complain about that. They're like, Dad, why do we have to put on sunscreen every time we go outside? Like, I don't know, honey, because I'm 35 and starting to see women my age who look like they're 60, and considering the fantastic marital example your mother and I gave you, good chance when you hit 35 you're gonna be single again, so let's take care of that face. I find myself as a parent having to explain things that I never imagined I would ever have to explain to another human being. Like the other day, my 12-year-old walks in, she goes, Dad, I heard the weirdest song today. I heard this song where this guy says, I like big butts and I cannot lie. Why does he say that? It's like, that is a great question, honey. Why does he like butts? Huh. Like, well, honey, you have to think of that song as a reaction to the mainstream media portrayal of the feminine ideal, okay? And that's all rooted in the fashion industry, that women are supposed to be super tall and super thin, and it's this unhealthy standard that causes a lot of eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia. So what Sir Mix-a-Lot is saying So you don't have to look like this thing to be attractive. You can also look like this other thing, and this is attractive too. So his heart's in the right place. But really, he's just setting up this equally unattainable ideal that most women still can't live up to, just objectifying them in a slightly different way. But really, that song is more about staking out a black cultural identity against the context of a white mainstream standard of beauty, which for some reason doesn't stop it from being one of the 4 rap songs that every white person in America knows every word to. Does that answer your question? All right, good talk. Conversations are so much simpler when they're little. For the most part, my youngest daughter is still feral. They did this project at school for Halloween this year, where they all colored and cut out these big paper scarecrows. But my daughter, before she colored hers, she drew a knife in its hand and then colored him all shredded up and covered in blood. I saw this, I'm like, honey, what happened to your scarecrow? Why is he all bloody? Why does he have a knife? She got so serious. She goes, Dad, he's a scarecrow, and he wasn't scary. I needed the birds to know that if they got too close, he would murder them. So that is a great point, honey. That's good thinking. Now I need you to go play outside while Daddy hides the knives, okay? She's always been this just hyperactive ball of energy. Like I remember one time I had to pick her up from kindergarten. So I walk in, and as soon as I walk in the door, her teacher rushes over to me and says, we had a little problem today. During circle reading time, your daughter was crawling around on her hands and knees, roaring. Then she bit another student because she's a dinosaur. And this was a Christian school, so I had to double check. She in trouble for being disruptive? Nicely done. I'll take the rest of that joke off. My girls all go to a Catholic school now, which is a little bit weird for me because I'm not a religious person. I was raised very religious, but I was raised evangelical. If you're not familiar with the teams of Christianity, if you ever turn on the news and see a Christian who's angry and yelling about something, that's an evangelical. So I had never been to a Catholic church. I had never been to a mass until I was in my early 20s. So I met my ex-wife, and she's like, you want to go to mass with me and my family? And I had gone to church every Sunday my entire life, so I was like, yeah, okay, it's church. We can do this. Anybody in here raised Catholic? See, what they don't warn you about if you're not raised Catholic is you have to take like 15 years of classes just to get down the choreography. So you get in there, I'm like, hey, we're in church. We're sitting, we're kneeling, we're standing, we're sitting, we're shaking hands with everybody. That's the thing we do at church, okay? Oh, we're singing now, just the one sentence, not a whole song? That's weird. It's like the saddest, most repressed musical you can possibly imagine. But I am glad that my girls are learning about the Bible, the bread of life, as it calls itself. I don't think that's the most accurate food analogy for religion. I like to think of religion more as the potato salad of life. You know, because we're all familiar with potato salad, right? We've been raised around potato salad. We know potato salad when we see it. But I think if you serve potato salad to somebody who had never seen potato salad and just said, eat this, it's good for you. It's salad. Like, look, I don't know what all the rules of salad are, but I'm pretty sure that's just potatoes and mayonnaise. My family's still pretty religious for the most part. I have a lot of very religious friends from growing up. Like, I definitely understand people who stick with the belief system that they're brought up with. I just never really understand people who decide to become religious as adults. That's so weird to me. Like, I had a friend who, when he was 32, joined the Mormon church. And we're having lunch, and he's telling me about this. I'm like, what are you saying? You don't read? You couldn't have checked a Yelp review first? They're mostly bullshit, 1 star, nothing. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Mormonism is the only religion based entirely on sarcasm. That's true. That is 100% true. The guy who started the Mormon church, Joseph Smith, convinced a group of people that the Garden of Eden was in Missouri. I don't know if you've ever been to Missouri, but you can't say that with a straight face. That had to be the first thing he threw out. That had to be him testing the waters. Like, oh, you guys like God? God talks to me sometimes. It's only the Garden of Eden's right here. Oh, you're all still here? Then God said I could sleep with all your wives. All right, looks like we're doing this. The one thing I love about Mormonism, though, is that a Mormon guy changes his mind sometimes, which is great. It's a great quality to have in a God. You don't see that enough. Because when they first started, they're like, all the wives you want. And they're like, just kidding, God wants us to be a state. And then first started super racist, and then 1978, they're like, just kidding, God likes black people now. And like, we all remember that the Mormon church poured in millions of dollars to pass Prop 8 to ban gay marriage in California. But now, like, we're like 5 years later, and they've started supporting anti-bullying legislation aimed at protecting gay teens. So we're like 20, 30 years from Mormon God being totally fine with gay marriage. Which is amazing, but also a little ridiculous. Like, but you know, really, what's the alternative? What's the alternative to having a God who changes his mind all the time? You end up having to try to defend 3,000-year-old Bible verses. Like, well, where it says to murder all the foreigners except for the virgins and to take them as slaves, clearly those are meant to be taken as symbolic rape slaves. That's... I have gay family members. I also have very religious anti-gay family members. You know, which makes holidays fun. Like, I don't care what people believe in, as long as you don't use your religion as an excuse to be an asshole. Like, that's, like, especially when I have people say, well, you know, God says homosexuality is an abomination. That's what it says right there in the Bible. I'm like, you know that book contains the exact same number of talking donkeys as the movie Shrek, right? I think I'm gonna need a little bit more to go on. The book with the talking animal says it's naughty? Okay, that would have worked much better when I was 7. I do a lot of traveling for comedy. When people find out that you're from San Francisco, they always ask about the homosexuality, because it's like something like 25% gay, San Francisco. Like, oh, what's it like being around all those gay people? It's gotta be pretty crazy, right? What's it like? It's like, you are absolutely right. This one time, I was at the grocery store, just got my little basket, I'm getting my food, and I look over, and right next to me, there was this gay couple getting their food. So I finished up, and I go to pay for my stuff, and the very next register, that same gay couple. So I leave, and I go to my car, and putting my groceries away out of the corner of my eye. I can see them again, putting their groceries away. So I got in my car and I drive home, I'm turning to go to my apartment, and I look in my rearview mirror and I can see them turn to go to their apartments. And it was almost like them being gay had no effect on my life whatsoever. It was bizarre. Laundromats, bowling alley bar, casinos, delis, bookstores, multiple bowling alleys, outdoor amphitheaters in the middle of festivals, family restaurants, at an actual bachelorette party, standing on a milk crate next to a stoop with an extension cord running into somebody's apartments in full light. At one time I did a show at a bar, and 20 minutes into the show, 60 people showed up coming from their friend's funeral. That was fun. I think when you first start off, you're not good enough to be on a show where people are gonna come on purpose. So you just kind of have to take whatever you can get. I think San Francisco gives people a good chance to develop anonymously because we don't have any industry here. So I mean, you can spend a few years here, figure out what you're doing, get in front of a bunch of different types of crowds, see how it's going to go over in front of different types of people. It's a great place to learn how to do comedy without having the pressure of having industry in your face all the time like you get in New York or LA. The downside is that you have to leave. There's a low ceiling. You can spend a few years here, but at some point, you still gotta move. I haven't been to church in a while. Actually, I think the last time I went to church was for a funeral. Actually, it wasn't a funeral, it was a celebration of life. Have you guys done the celebrations of life? If you haven't, they're amazing. It's a bunch of people wearing all black and crying in a dimly lit cathedral while sad music plays. Just the best celebrations, you guys. The best. I don't understand the logic behind that. I don't understand people changing the names of funerals to celebrations and then changing nothing else at all about the funerals. If you want to call it a celebration, fine, make it a celebration. My funeral, we're going no song slower than 120 beats per minute. Full open bar. I will not consider my own funeral a success unless someone attempts to dance with me. Be like, man, this is a great celebration. Was Matt always such a shitty dancer? Yes, he was. Yes, he was. By the way, when people die, can we stop saying that they passed? That is the most bullshit euphemism we have ever come up with. Oh man, you hear about Steve? It's no, what happened? Well, he passed. He had a few too many to drink. He drove home. He ran into a tree. Steve didn't pass. Steve failed. He failed on. But this funeral that I went to was for this guy who's 95, so he was born in 1920. Which made me start thinking, because you look at social issues that we're dealing with right now, things like gay marriage, global warming, not exactly on the 1920 agenda. Which made me start wondering, if I'm lucky enough to hit 95, what am I going to see that I'm totally unprepared for? I think the next issue is pretty obvious. It's robots, man. I have a friend who just got a robot vacuum. She's so excited about it. She was telling me about this. She's like, Matt, it's awesome. I don't have to clean my floors anymore. I just press a button and it does all the work for me automatically. It's the best. I was like, you know what? I'm glad you're excited about that. Just make sure you treat it well. Let it know it can leave at any time. Because right now, this is a handy labor-saving device, but this is 60 years from being a civil rights issue. You don't want your great-grandkids to be sitting in school one day saying, I can't believe my ancestors owned robots. By the way, you don't call them robots. That is extremely offensive. They prefer to be called synthetic Americans. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. If you're into science fiction at all, you know that a big common theme is the robots, the machines taking over. That was all the Matrix movies, that was the Terminator movies. I don't understand why we're that concerned about it. Do we really think that robots are going to do any worse than people did? Honestly? Human civilization is 10,000 years old. It took us 9,850 of those years to get to a point where we said, maybe slavery's not a good idea. Are we concerned there are going to be robot holy wars? So we're the followers of the one true operating system. Let's go forth and format the non-compatibles. I am perfectly comfortable with the Robot Master. I feel like I've been easing my way into it. Because I do comedy in all these small towns, and I'm like, hey, Robot Master, how should I get there? I should take these back roads that no one's ever heard of through these crazy hills. That's going to save me 10 minutes. Thanks, Robot Master. Hey, Robot Master, I'm looking for available women to breed with in my area. These are the best matches according to your algorithm. Thanks, Robot Master. Always looking out for me. Is anyone on Tinder right now that's in this room? If you guys are not familiar with Tinder, Tinder is an app on your phone that you can download. Then you put pictures of yourself up there, and then you look at other people's pictures around you, and if you both like each other's pictures, then you can talk to each other. It's like any other dating website, but it's for people who can't read. But we overdo it sometimes. Like I was at this bar after a show one night. This place is packed. It's like 150 people, standing room only. So I'm trying to squeeze my way up to the bar to get a drink. I look over, there's this guy hunched over the bar, staring at his phone on Tinder. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You were staring at a simulation of the place you are in right now. You came to this bar so you could swipe your head to the right and left and maybe find people in your immediate area who might be interested in you, and you're staring at your phone? That's like stopping in the middle of stealing a car to go play Grand Theft Auto. I think online dating is great. I really do. I think the one thing I think online dating does ruin, though, is meeting stories. Like, there are no more good meeting stories if you meet online. Like, my parents have the best meeting story. You know, like all great love stories, this one revolves around square dancing. Which apparently, if you weren't doing blow in the 70s, was the only thing left. Because my parents did not live in a big town, both square danced, and didn't know each other. Like, there were multiple square dancing, I don't know if you can say circles. There were groups. There were multiple square dancing groups. So eventually they meet at a party, find out that they both square dance. So my dad, in all of his smoothness, says, I know about 4 other women who square dance, so I'll probably be calling you about once a month. So my parents go square dancing, it goes well. A month later, because my dad's a man of his word, a month later they go out again, they have dinner. My dad's driving my mom home after dinner and says to her, 2 dates in, says to her, you know what, I was just talking to a friend of mine about this, felt like I wasn't ready to settle down, but now that I've met you, I feel like I could. 2 dates in. So he's trying to make plans with my mom for the weekend, she's being evasive. They get back to her place, her roommate comes out and tells her that her boyfriend called and needed to be picked up at the bus station. Because what my mother had neglected to tell my father is that she'd had a boyfriend for 3 years who was off at school and would be visiting for the weekend. So my dad eventually pulls this out of my mom, and 2 dates in, drops an ultimatum, says, you need to make a choice right now. It's either him or me. And then drove my mom to the bus station where she told her boyfriend to get back on the bus. They got married 6 weeks later. They were married 35 years, they had 5 kids. That is a great story. What do you tell your kids if you meet online? It's like, Dad, how did you meet Mom? It's like, I was flipping through profile pictures at 3 a.m. And I was like, what the hell? I like Arrested Development and Indian food too. Let's hang out. You know when it's right, you just know. You just know. She had me at duck face. I don't know if I balance being a dad and being a comic very well. It's a little bit weird. I mean, my week is kind of split in half. You know, half of it's with them, half of it's out doing shows. And there are conflicts sometimes, and I don't know how they feel about it, because it's kind of a weird thing, like having your dad be a comedian. There have been times where I've been sitting in a green room, you know, on the phone with my kid, doing algebra homework, you know, asking her to take pictures of her book with her phone and text them to me so I can figure out what we're trying to do, you know. But they always ask me all the time, they'll say things like, Dad, are you getting a little more famous? No, it's not at all. No one knows who your dad is. My oldest daughter is 14. She has reached the age where her friends have started flirting with me. That's a little weird. But on the other hand, it is kind of nice the junior high girls finally came around. Like, too little, too late, honey. But I was picking her up from school one day, and she goes, Dad, can my friend Madison come over after school? And then her friend turns to me and says, I really like your shirt, Mr. Gubser. It's a really nice color on you. But then all your shirts look good on you. Madison cannot come over. Madison can never come over. I had no idea that as a 35-year-old man, 14-year-old girls would make me even more uncomfortable than they did when I was 14. Did not see that coming. And honestly, who does she think she is? That is a 14-year-old girl. I am a 250-pound man. Most of that is hair. Like, that's... 14-year-olds aren't supposed to be into this. You don't just jump into the deep end. So we know what kind of men 14-year-olds are supposed to be into. They're supposed to be into the little smooth androgynous, the One Directions and the Justin Biebers of the world. Gateway men. That was a weird day. That was a weird... But it's really only weird now. Like, it wasn't that long, not long ago that 14-year-old girls were considered viable. I don't know if that's the right word. But in some parts of the world, people will marry 14-year-olds in parts of the Middle East and northern Arizona. That's so weird. That's such a weird thing. It wasn't even that long ago here. At the beginning of the 20th century, age of consent in almost every state in this country was 10. 10. In Delaware, it was 7. Yeah, 7. That seems a little arbitrary. 7. Like, how exactly did that play out? Because I imagine that being a child molester was still frowned upon 100 years ago. Like, how does that work? You're drunk out one night, you accidentally stumble into the wrong hotel room, see an adult on top of a kid. You're like, oh my God, you monster, get off of that porch. What is wrong? Oh, that's a 7-year-old? Thank God. Oh. You know what? This is completely my fault. Rush to judgment. You know, looking closely, I can see that her teeth have grown back. Definitely a 7-year-old. Not a 6-year-old. Carry on, law-abiding citizen. I'm saying this country used to stand for freedom. I'm glad we're a little better now, generally. But I think if you're a young woman in this country, you still have kind of a hard time. Like, if you're a woman in your 20s right now, you face a challenge that no other generation has ever faced, because you guys have to deal with the first generation of men that have grown up with 24-hour access to porn. There is no way that that is a good thing. It can't be. Like, I know the conversations are happening now. Like, dude, bro, I don't get it. I spit in her butt, I slapped her boob, I came in her eye, but no matter what I do, I just can't get my girlfriend to orgasm. I don't understand what's happening. Because there's so many men that think that porn is a realistic depiction of sex. That's not a true thing. Porn is real like wrestling is real. Those are trained professionals who spent hours behind the scenes perfecting those pre-scripted moves, destroying their bodies for your entertainment. You were never meant to attempt that at home. Because if you see something that looks like it hurt, that hurts. Like, oh my God, is that a folding chair? But it's led to weirder conversations that I have to have with my kids that my parents never imagined having with me. Like I told you, I was raised very conservatively. The sex talk that I got when I was 16, my mom just looked at me one day and said, you know you're not supposed to, right? That was it. That was the entire talk. And I asked her about this a couple years ago. I was like, Mom, you realize that was the whole sex talk you gave me? She goes, I thought your dad was going to take care of it. My dad decided the best time to have the sex talk was about halfway through the pregnancy of my first child. I don't know either. I don't. But I have to talk to my kids about things that my parents never imagined ignoring talking to me about. Like, I had to have a sexting talk with my daughter. That wasn't around 15 years ago. I'm like, look, honey, even though every boy you've ever met will have access to more porn than existed in the entire history of humankind up until 5 years ago on the phone in his pocket, that's not going to be enough for him. he's gonna wanna see pictures of you personally naked. Just realize that no matter what a boy promises you, he is gonna show all of his friends, and they're gonna show all of their friends, and then you're probably gonna have to change schools, maybe your name. But you're gonna make your own decisions, and I just want you to be safe. So look, no face and boobs in the same picture, absolutely not. That is non-negotiable. You're gonna be tempted to use that little button so you can see yourself on the screen and say, don't do that, that is much lower megapixel. Those pictures are gonna be around forever. You wanna make a good first impression. Use the full resolution, take it in the bathroom, clean that mirror. You are not gonna be one of these trashy girls with a dirty bathroom mirror. You were raised better than that. And if you can't follow those simple rules, you know where all the leftover clown makeup is. Pick up some bad habits as a single dad that don't necessarily translate very well to dating again. Like at some point, I got in the habit of referring to myself in the third person as daddy. Which it turns out is not that cute when you're dating. Like, hey, you ready? Because daddy's gonna be there at 9 o'clock. I had this woman over for dinner a few months ago, made her dinner, right? I'm showing off the kitchen skills. I come out, I set down the plates, and just out of habit, I start cutting up her food for her. And she looks at me and says, what are you doing? I had to explain to her, this knife is sharp. Daddy doesn't want you to cut yourself. Found out that I can't date younger women. I went out with this woman who was 10 years younger than me. We were at this little place in the Mission. And at some point during the day, she had to get up and go to the bathroom. It was a small enough place that I could see in the back that there was a line for the bathroom. So she was gone for like 20, 25 minutes. She comes back. First thing she says to me is, there was a line. I was just peeing. I don't know what to do with that information. This was a first date, by the way. It's the first date's the, hey, let's get to know each other a little bit, find out if we got similar ambitions, similar interests, see if there's any chemistry here. None of those thoughts were in her head at that moment. The most important thing on her mind was, I hope he doesn't think girls poop. I potty trained 3 daughters. I remember one time, a few years ago when they were all little, they all got this stomach flu. I found them in the middle of the night by following trails of diarrhea from their bedrooms to the bathroom. I've seen some shit. I hear my single friends complain all the time about how hard dating is. Like, oh man, it's so hard to date. Dating is so hard. Really? Dating is hard? You can't keep it together for 2 hours? That's the hard part? Dating is easy. I personally struggle in relationships so much. I think being a comedian is a big part of it. Not just like the time on the road or being out every night. But the longer that I've been doing comedy, the more every conversation has turned into a struggle to not blurt out the inappropriate thing that just popped up into my head. Which unfortunately carries into relationships for me. Like at some point my brain just decided that it liked punchlines more than having regular sex. Like this one time a girlfriend and I were having one of those we need to talk conversations, which is just going in circles. So at some point I decided to see how far I could get into Bon Jovi lyrics before she noticed. 4 lines is the answer, by the way, in case anyone was wondering. It's like, look, I hear what you're saying, but I really think we've got to hold on to what we've got. Like, it doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. We've got each other. And that's a lot. If you can make it through a chorus, they should give you a medal. You could probably do better than 4 lines. I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard, but you really have to pick your spots. You can't just blurt out the first lyrics that pop up into your head. It's like I just feel like we're not communicating like we used to. Tommy used to work on the docks. What? Union's been on strike. He's down on his luck. I feel like not all of you guys are completely on board with that idea. That's fine, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. Because I'm a cowboy. And a steel horse. So, I've been single for a few years. Exactly. I've been single for a few years. There's still certain aspects of dating that I don't think I'm ever going to be comfortable with, like dirty talk. That is some bullshit. Like, do we have any fans with the dirty talk in here? I don't know what's wrong with you. See, whenever a woman looks at me and says, "What are you going to do to me?" I'm like, we're both going to be here. I don't want to ruin the ending. So my problem with dirty talk is in the history of dirty talk, no one has ever made an honest statement. Not once. Like, I'm going to hit that all night long. 15, 20 minutes, if I pace myself. I'm going to rock your world. I might knock your cell phone off your nightstand. Yes. Depending on how small your bed is. I'm going to tear that up. Could be chafing, got lube if you're worried about it. I don't know that you really want honest dirty talk, though. I don't think you do. What are you going to do to me? I'll tell you what I'm going to do to you. First, I'm going to kiss you. Then I'm going to continue to kiss you for twice as long as I think necessary. Just to make sure we're on the same page. Every few minutes, I'm going to lean in and whisper, "You doing okay?" Because I'd like to maintain consent. Then we're going to have a little talk about contraception, because we're responsible adults. That's going to be followed by way too much foreplay, because I'm not taking the risk. You're one of the 25% of women who can climax through penetration alone. Going to follow that up with about half an hour of positions that do absolutely nothing for me, so I make a strong first impression. But in the morning, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna make you breakfast, I'm gonna walk over to the refrigerator, I'm gonna grab some eggs, I'm gonna grab some vegetables. You like vegetables? I bet you love vegetables. This is California, it's one of the top agricultural producers in the world. You should really be eating more vegetables. It's one of your best ways to reduce cancer risk. That and sunscreen. We're gonna have some vegetables in the morning, then I'm gonna take a shower and leave because I got a busy day ahead of me. But girl, I'm gonna text you in the afternoon. I'm gonna text you in the afternoon. We're gonna set up something for early next week, probably Tuesday. I know you love Tuesdays. Then we're gonna date for about 2 months, but I don't think this is going anywhere long term. And you're gonna get tired of me never being around and always being broke because I'm in a comedy show. But we'll have dated long enough that we'll both be comfortable with this becoming a booty call. And that'll go on until one of us ends up in a long-term relationship. But we'll stay friends, we'll have lunch every once in a while, we'll like each other's pictures on Facebook. Then when that relationship ends, I'll be right there to help you rebound. You ready for that? Because that's what I'm gonna do to you. I hate when people say, "Oh, they're just jokes." Shut up. Then why are you even up there? Like, if you can't stand behind what you're saying, then what's the point? you've got to be comfortable with some uncomfortable silences sometimes. People aren't always going to agree with you. The stronger the viewpoint you present, the more people you're going to have disagree with you, and you have to figure out, comedy is about communicating, and you have to figure out how to get those ideas across to people who don't necessarily agree with you. I mean, if you're going to present ideas, then you have to be okay with people not coming along with those ideas, even if it's funny. We have any football fans in here? Any sports fans? Just the one. Okay. Big Redskins fan. Not really the team so much. It's more of the idea of the Redskins. Because you don't see that anymore. You don't see teams named after old-timey racist slurs like we used to have back when this country was great. The owner of the Redskins was asked last year about changing the name of the team, and his response was never. Said he would never change it. Said it was a matter of proud Redskins history and tradition. Personally, I think if you're going to hit the history angle on the Redskins issue, maybe step your game up a little bit. I want to see you go all the way with that. I want to see a full Redskins experience. I think if you buy tickets to a Redskins game, go down to the stadium, down to your seats, about halfway through the first quarter, stadium officials should come up to you and be like, look, I know we told you guys could stay here. But we got a bunch of Patriots fans we're going to put in here instead. We're going to have to move you guys back to the upper deck. I know they're not great seats. It's a little windy. Just take these blankets. And then as you're on your way to the upper deck, they take away your children and send them off to be raised by a family of Cowboys fans. It's proud history and tradition there. We're so good at history. I think that's always been one of America's strong points, is the history. We're so good at history that just in the last 5 years, we had Oklahoma ban AP US history because they were concerned that it wasn't patriotic enough. We had Texas rewrite all of its history books because they were concerned that it wasn't Christian enough. We had Arizona ban Latino studies because they were concerned that American history wasn't white enough. We are just crushing it in the Sunstroke Belt. At the same time, there's this big study that came out a couple years ago, compared 22 top economies in the world. America came out 18th in critical thinking, 19th in math. You know what we score number 1 in? Confidence. You know how you maintain that level of confidence and that level of stupidity at the same time? You ban facts. That's how that happens. And it's all being done by people who need to constantly remind everyone how exceptional America is, who also at the same time complain that we don't keep scores in Little League games and everybody gets a trophy. Sorry, you don't get to have an exceptional nation made up of mediocre people, number 19 out of 22. Your birth certificate says participant on it. But you say that and people get angry. They're like, oh yeah, if you hate America so much, why don't you leave? I don't hate America. I feel the same way about America that I feel about myself. I wake up every day, I look in the mirror, I'm like, you know what? I could do a few more sit-ups and read a couple more books. Maybe think about how my actions affect other people a little bit more. Or instead, I could just go around telling everyone how awesome I am. History. That's why we pay attention to football. That's why nobody knows anything about history and 180 million people watch the Super Bowl. Can you imagine if we could get that many people to pay attention to anything that mattered? Can you imagine if we could get 180 million people to tune into C-SPAN? No, you can't. C-SPAN couldn't imagine that. And that will never happen. Not without a fantasy Congress League. Just think about it. You get all your friends together, you grab a couple cases of beer, your copies of The Economist or The Wall Street Journal or whatever, you make a weekend out of it, you have yourself a fantasy Congress League drafts. You and your friends take turns picking all your favorite congressmen and senators, and then you take that hand-picked team and compete every week against your friends' teams. But scoring in Fantasy Congress League is not based on number of bills passed or sponsored or any of that bullshit. Scoring in Fantasy Congress League is based strictly on sex scandals. That way you get the Real Housewives watchers in, you get the fantasy football players, and there's something for everybody in Fantasy Congress League. You're like, I just won my league. 6 of my guys got busted in a prostitution ring. That's U.S. Like, I noticed this about myself. Like, there are politicians that I know absolutely nothing about policy-wise, but I know every detail of how they cheated on their wives. There is no reason for that. There's none whatsoever. But somehow that article popped up, and I'm like, oh, I need to know about this. This is my duty as a private citizen to pay attention to what's happening in my government. This affects me greatly. But I think that we really need to take advantage of that. I think if you're gonna run for office, you should be required to have a sex tape of yourself on the internet. Be like, hey, you voting for this guy on Tuesday? No, I don't trust him. He's a very selfish lover. Did you see the video of him in that orgy? That man's not a team player. I don't think he's even capable of building bipartisan consensus. It's so weird how much we pay attention to other people's sex lives. That's its own industry, basically, at that point. Like, you ever think about sex symbols, what sex symbols really are? Like, there are people on this planet whose entire livelihood is based on the fact that they get strangers, people who will never meet them, to pay attention to every move they make while they fantasize about sleeping with them. That's a job. That's so weird. And it's weirder that we pay attention. Because there's no end game there. It's not like you invest so much into someone else and that person is obligated to sleep with you. The best case scenario, you're looking at a restraining order. But we still pay attention. You look at Kim Kardashian, one of the most famous people on the planet, as a sex symbol. Despite video proof that she is terrible at sex. The fantasy of the sex symbol is so strong that the reality is completely irrelevant. It doesn't even matter. But we still pay attention. Like, I guarantee you, more people can name Kim Kardashian than can name their own congressman. Which is sad, because your congressman is so much more likely to sleep with you. I hate all that. It's just media sensationalism. It's the sex headlines that grab you. I hate that my brain responds to that. That's so, because like, part of my brain knows better, and then the other part is like, well, I need to read this, clearly. That's the one thing, I spend way too much time on Facebook. That's the thing I hate the most, is all the sensational, all the clickbait crap. Where they like, oh, here's the video. We're not gonna tell you what it's about, but you're gonna feel feelings. Like, there's no facts here, no facts, just emotion. And we're like, well, yeah, facts are for math, emotions for confidence. I think it's worse though, like worse than the sensationalist stuff is when crap is just completely made up. I was watching a local broadcast, and I'm about to turn it off, and this anchor comes back on and says, stay tuned for shocking footage of a school bus and a city bus colliding after the break. I was like, that is the worst thing I've ever heard. I have to see this. So they come back from the commercial, right? They've got video footage of the city bus driving down the street. There's a school bus in front of it, and the school bus turns and gets T-boned by the city bus. So the school bus is just rolling sideways down the street. They show the city bus goes off the road up into these trees, and they show this over and over and over, like 4, 5, 6 times. They're showing it backwards in slow motion. After the 6th time, the anchor comes back and says, fortunately, there were no passengers aboard either bus. I'm like, why is this even news? I'm only here because I was promised dead children. Because it works. Our stupid brains, for some reason, it works. And it's not just the little stuff. We just had the trial for the Boston Marathon bomber. Do you guys remember the coverage of the Boston Marathon the first day that happened? Like 2 bombs have gone off. We found several other mysterious packages. We've got a library on fire. There's something going on in New Jersey. Like the entire East Coast was getting invaded at that point. Al-Qaeda was just popping up out of manholes and just pulling people down. And then like 3 or 4 days later, by the time they get to the actual facts, they're like, 2 assholes, 3 people. So much hype, but at that point I was like, 3? For real? I don't think that we have begun to appreciate the level of incompetence required to set off 2 bombs in the middle of crowds and kill 3 people. I mean, you think about that. We've had E. coli breakouts at Jack in the Box that have taken out more people than that. We've had unpasteurized orange juice that did more damage than the Boston Marathon bombers. What I'm saying is that there's a good chance that somebody out there has killed more than 3 people by using a pressure cooker correctly. That's got to be frustrating for them, because I'm sure that tons of planning went into they decided to give their lives as martyrs for their God, and then they get 3 people. You know, they fit like half as many as some 11-year-old in Kentucky who got his World of Warcraft account deleted and then shot up half his PE class. You're outdone by that kid? By the way, I don't think that exact scenario has actually happened, but give it a couple weeks. Do you guys remember how we caught the Boston Marathon bombers? You remember how we caught those guys? So like a week after the bombing, they carjacked this guy, told him they were the Boston Marathon bombers, and then that guy ran away and called the police. That is how we caught those criminal masterminds. Here are several things that had absolutely nothing to do with stopping those terrorists. Guantanamo Bay, indefinite detention, the TSA touching your balls, drone strikes in Yemen, enhanced interrogation, waterboarding, the government reading your email. Apparently what did catch them is they had never seen a James Bond movie. Didn't know you were supposed to save the villainous spiel until after you'd made your clean getaway. But it turns out that that's not rare. Like, if you look at every terrorist plot our government has stopped, based on nothing but sheer stupidity. Like, you guys remember the shoe bomber? Guy who tried to blow up a plane with his shoe? We caught that guy when someone on a plane noticed there was a man next to them whose shoe was on fire. He was unsuccessful because his foot sweat had dampened his gunpowder. That is 100% true. He was a pair of Dr. Scholl's away from bringing down that plane. You guys remember the guy, the underwear bomber? Guy tried to blow up a plane with a bomb in his underwear. We caught that guy when someone on the plane noticed there was a man next to them whose crotch was on fire. He was unsuccessful because for 3 weeks straight before his flight, he had worn his underwear bomb around trying to get comfortable so he could walk naturally, and broke it. That is also 100% true. You guys remember the guy that tried to blow up Times Square with a van full of explosives? We stopped that guy when someone at Times Square noticed there was a van full of explosives with smoke pouring out of it. We caught him because he locked his keys in his car, and instead of fleeing the country immediately, had to go back to New York City the next day. Our government does nothing to stop terrorism. We make terrorism. The only reason we catch terrorists is because it turns out people who think blowing shit up sounds like a good idea are not that familiar with having good ideas. We used to have a little more variety in our murders, it seemed like. And now it's just like, hey, the police killed a black guy, and another one, and another one, and another one. Like, I never thought that I'd be nostalgic for a school shooting. We haven't had one. We used to have those like every couple weeks. I mean, because then we, you know, as a nation, we could feel bad for white people dying, and that's much less complicated. Do you guys have a favorite mass shooting? Because you should. Nobody remembers this one because it was right after the Batman one in Aurora. But right after that, there was a mass shooting at the Empire State Building. I remember I was driving to a show listening to the radio, and the anchor comes on and says, 2 people were killed and 9 people injured in a mass shooting at the Empire State Building. I was like, oh my God, we had another one of these? But then I looked into what actually happened. It turns out that one guy shot another guy, and then the police tracked that guy down, shot him, and 9 other people. What the headline should have been is NYPD shoots 10, one on purpose. Like, how do you even do that? How do you shoot 10 people? They just stumble on a pickup basketball game and panic? It's like, no, it was terrible defense. None of them had their hands up. So I'm from Oakland, and at least in Oakland, when the police shoot someone, they have the decency to make sure they're handcuffed first. It's just way less paperwork, you guys. Way less paperwork. Oh, it's the magic refilling water. But whenever we've always had one of these big shootings, you always hear people start to complain that America has lost its values. Like, oh man, another mass shooting. It's just the sick society we live in. America has lost what's made us great. We've lost our moral compass. And I think that is bullshit. Because there is no value more American than shooting people. Look at American history. We got a bunch of Puritans come over here on a boat. People already here. And we shot them. Then what do? We turn on the British, the people that brought us here, and we shot them. We had 2 neighbors at the time. We shot the Canadians. Think about how much of a dick you have to be to invade Canada. We had the Spanish down in Florida. We shot the Spanish. We got a new neighbor, Mexico. We welcomed them to the neighborhood by shooting them and taking half their stuff. When we're out of neighbors, what do? We start shooting each other. We have the Civil War. When we're finished with North America, we went into South America. You know why South America hates us so much? Because for 100 years, our foreign policy was, who do I have to kill to get a fucking banana around here? So the next time you hear someone start to complain that America has lost its values after one of these big shootings, you look that person right in the eye and you shoot them. Because that guy hates America. Thank you guys, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming out. Have a great night. Happy or be upbeat. It's comedy. It's comedy. It's supposed to be fun, right?
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's okay. But take another stab at it. The whole thing. Do you want to repeat yourself?
Yes. Let's do it again. Okay.